The first step to any of my projects now is a simple blockout. I want to decide on the main composition of the frame, I want to place the main elements, and here I am using a subdivided plane with a texture from Blender Kit that has some displacement to it. Now the displacement is not necessary if you only plan on using 2D ground, but when I started the project I thought I would be doing it in 3D mostly, so that's why I used displacement. Using proportional editing you can create some dunes and some elevation to create some nicer shadows. I also want to place some objects in the foreground. Here I am using a transport palette that I'm trying to place in an interesting way to give it a bit more interest to the shot, to make it more interesting and more original. This blockout also allows me to kind of nail down the overall artistic direction I want to go with and what the theme of the render will be. I also try to have a good idea of the lighting I want to use, so I'm testing out different HDRIs to get the different looks and different feelings and see how the light reacts to the scene. You can also try to block out the shadows with objects in the frame or off frame. Now I finished modeling the Telehandler in the meantime, and so I went ahead and replaced it with a more polished and finished version. So that's why you see that it has changed. I'm also trying to integrate it a bit better in the environment. Turning the wheels is also a great way to make the shot a bit more dynamic, even if your vehicle is in a parked position. So always try to turn your wheels, don't have them straight up. It shows a bit more of the rim and makes it more interesting. Now I also kept playing with the lighting and I added sand to the tire to mimic the texture of the ground. And using a node group, you can kind of link them together. That way if you change the ground, it will also change the texture on the tire. So that's a great way to kind of blend in the vehicle a bit better, especially if I was going to pass with 2D after. So I tweaked some more things and then I was ready to go into Photoshop for the first time. After rendering, I started to work in Photoshop. I created the base layout for the image, so basically what I wanted to have in the background and the very foreground, just to kind of create a rough layout and see where I wanted to go. At first I thought about a construction site, but then I changed my mind to more of like a desert or open field, like a very sandy field, obviously. And then I darkened the foreground just to kind of give a vignette effect and guide the focus towards the telehandler. I then added some more details on the edges and started working my way to create a more interesting image and more realistic using photo bashing. I was not really happy of how it was turning out, so at this point I decided to jump back into Blender and re-render another image but with the different HDRI, just to get a more dynamic image and get something that looks better. I tried different blending modes just to see if it could look better somehow, but I ended up just drawing it there and trying to erase some of the shadows just to not darken the image so much. After that I just continued replacing the ground with more photos, using mainly 2 as the base for my photo bashing, but obviously I guess I could have used more or less. I wish I had higher resolution images, but these were the ones I found that looked quite nice, but if I had to restart I would use higher resolution ones, because you will see that once you start scaling them up, it looks really blurry and it kind of breaks the illusion if your render is really crisp and then the images you had are very shallow, blurry, and not detailed. I made sure to check the hue and saturation of each image I was adding, just to try to blend them a little bit more efficiently and make them fit together better. At this point I was not really happy with the cloudy sky, so I decided to replace it with another one. All of the ads that I saw had this really clear blue sky, but after trying it out, I didn't think it would fit very well. I don't think it would have integrated quite well with the sand dunes in the back, so I went with some more hilly terrain. I also re-rendered another image in Blender to again change the lighting and just have a more pleasant image. It's quite quick to render back in Blender, and if it saves you time and makes for a better product at the end, why not? Now, after blending in the hills of the back of the image to the ones in the sky, I thought I was pretty much done, so I went ahead with some color adjustment and some vignette and lens effects. But as you can see, it's not a very pleasant image, just because maybe the horizon is very flat. You can't see here, but it's quite low resolution on the foreground, it doesn't blend very well. So that's why it's important to take pauses and take a step back, and that's what I did. Now, on the next day, I could see more clearly what was needed to be done, so I went ahead and tried to integrate the Telehandler better with the ground by trying to mix the stabilizers, not sure what to call them, but the rest of the image overall. I also wanted to add more details to the ground, so I went back on the internet and tried to find more pictures. So I went ahead with this one, erased the sky, and then tried to blend it to get a more realistic look and more dramatic effects. I also added some tire tracks. Now, it didn't go as well as I would have hoped. It was quite hard to align them and to get them to look quite realistic, so it ended up being very lightly visible, but I still think it was a nice effect to add, and it's a little extra detail. Now, once I was done with the tire tracks, I moved on to the foreground because it was not detailed enough. It was kind of blurry and didn't look very nice. So I just wanted to add some more details to it. So to do that, I used the same exact image I thought I used for the background and just re-imported it and used it for the foreground. I erased the parts I didn't want, and then I placed it somewhere in the bottom of the frame just to kind of try to blend it as best as I could. Now you can see it's much more interesting of an image. It almost has this kind of post-apocalyptic look to it. Maybe it's because of the rocks, it kind of looks like a Martian ground, but at this stage I was pretty happy with it. I decided to add some lens effects, a bit more vignette, and I thought I was again done with the image. Well, that's why it's so important to take a step back and ask for feedback. Now, once I posted the picture and asked for feedback, I immediately received that the ground transition was not that great. So I decided to rework that, and I also wanted to blend the Telehandler better with its environment. To do that, I decided to add some dust to it and added some more lens effects. I also wanted to rework the ground. Again, it was quite low resolution at the moment, and you could clearly see the difference between each images, which is something I didn't want, and I would try to fix that. Now, the first step I had in mind to kind of blend in the vehicle better with the environment was to add some dust to it. I thought it would be quite a great way to blend them better and also a nice little dramatic touch. So that's what I did with a kind of cloud brush. I just tried to paint some values and then blend them to the rest of the layers. I then duplicated the layer and used a darker kind of sand tone just to have some more details in the dust and that wouldn't be so obvious that it's just paintbrushes. Now it worked quite well, I must say. I was pretty happy with the look of it. It made for an interesting image and everything was going quite well, I must say. I then tweaked the colors a little bit and decided to again work on the ground. I made the scale smaller just to have more resolution and to have a less blurry image overall. I also wanted to change the colors just to blend all of them better. Now the horizon line was looking pretty boring and empty, so I added back an image of rocks and tried to blend that as best as I could with the rest of the images just to have a bit more interest going on in the background. And another effect I realized was that all of the dark rocks we had were kind of creating this circle around the vehicle, which again is kind of a vignette effect, trying to direct the eye towards the vehicle and the point of interest of the image. After that, I erased some of the shadows, replaced the vehicle with another render that has a darker ground, just so the reflections would then be darker on the render, and you will see that in a few seconds. It looks much better and helps a lot to integrate the vehicle with its environment. I then tweaked the colors, added some more details, and I was ready to call it a day for real this time. And with that, here's the final image. If you liked the video, if you learned something, please let me know, subscribe, and I will see you next week. Bye!